My name is Barry Willett. I have been blessed with many gifts and opportunities in this life, and I have been asked to come here tonight to share with you a story that's very personal to me, very painful to me, but that will be made easier by the fact that I see very many friends here tonight, so thank you. My story began on August the 1st, 1998. It was a bright, warm, sunny day, and my wife and I had been invited. We had an opportunity to go with some new friends that we'd met, neighbors in the neighborhood, to fly to Chicago to have a dinner one evening. So that sounded like a lot of fun. We didn't want to turn that down, so we flew to Chicago in our new friend's twin-engine Cessna that he owned. We flew into a small airport that you're probably all familiar with, Meigs Field in Chicago, and drove a short distance to a little restaurant off of Michigan Avenue. Park Avenue Cafe, I believe. Dinner was uneventful. We had a nice time and sort of rushed back to the plane and to the airport because the airport closed at 10 o'clock, and the rule was you had to be off the ground by 10 or you had to spend the night. So there were four of us, my wife and I and our two friends, the pilot and his wife. The pilot went to ready the plane for flight, and the three remaining of us stopped at the restroom to get one last restroom break in before we headed back to Louisville. We got to the plane, and the pilot sat in the front. My wife, Debbie, sat in the seat right next to his, the co-pilot seat, so to speak, and his wife, Barbie, and I sat in the back seat. I'm sure that my remembrance and my vision of these events, although burned into my memory, are probably altered somewhat by perception and time. It's been 12 years. But I remember being seated in the back, and how pretty it looked out because Meigs Field was right on the shoreline of Lake Michigan, and you could see the skyline of Chicago. So I was seated in the back right seat, and I could look out to my right and see the city, and it was a beautiful sight. It was dark in the plane. We took off in a southerly direction. And I really remember just the absence of noise. The pilot and my wife could communicate with each other because they had headsets and a microphone on. The rest of us really couldn't communicate effectively because it was loud when you're taking off. The plane came up to speed, and we got about 3/4 of the way down the runway, and what I felt was an abrupt braking of the plane, like he had put the brakes on abruptly. And then just as soon as that happened, the plane geared up again, and we took off. We got airborne with a nose-up position. But then what I remember hearing is a sound, a loud sound. It was an alarm. It was an engine stall alarm of some sort, indicating, I learned later, that we were not at the correct speed and that we were coming back down. What I could see looking out the window to my right was, again, the lights of the city of Chicago, but this time with reflections on the water because we were airborne over Lake Michigan. The plane came down. The first thing that I remember is the plane striking the water with the tail first, and it made kind of a glancing sound. You could tell that we'd hit, but we bounced. That kind of leveled the plane out, and the next impact that we had with the water was horrendously violent. In essence, the plane came to an abrupt stop. We nosed in, and that flipped the plane over, tail over nose, and we landed upside down in the water. I must have lost consciousness because the next thing that I remember is coming to, hanging upside down from the roof of the plane, hearing water, hearing screams. I unbuckled my seatbelt, and there was no lights. I fell into water. That gave me another indication that there was water. So I immediately heard the pilot screaming to his wife, "You've got to get the door open. You've got to get the door open." And that appeared to be what she was doing. She was struggling to open a door and not having any luck at it. I don't remember if I offered to help, if we had any conversation, or if I pushed her out of the way, but I tried to open the door, and what I now remember initially thinking was a door was actually a small window, and it was jammed. it was to be pushed out, and I can remember getting half of it pushed out, and now I'm not sure if it was pushing out or pushing in, but I remember it was jammed on something. And the difficult part was that the water was coming in half of that window, almost like you'd imagine sticking your head in a fire plug if they open the water flow, and you stick your head into that and you feel that horrendous rush of water. That's what was coming into the plane, and it was rapidly filling up. I immediately got the feeling, this is where I'm going to die. But within nanoseconds, I remembered that I had 2 small kids at home, and I knew immediately that I was not going to die in this plane, that they needed me at home. So I kind of put my head and my shoulder into the window and tried to open it that way. That didn't work. I was then able to kind of back out of the window, and I put the back of the plane was right up kind of against me. I put my back up against the back seat, and I pushed with my feet, and whatever was blocking that window from opening cleared, because I remember the sensation of my left foot going out the open hole. And I went out that window, came up the side of the plane to the surface of the lake. The lady that was seated next to me came right up after me, and the pilot of the plane came up immediately on the other side. I screamed to the pilot, "Where's Debbie?" And he said, "She's still in the plane." So the lake was incredibly rough. I remember going back down. I followed the fuselage back down to the window, and I stuck my arm in as far as I could and felt around. I don't know how far down it was, but I came back up, grabbed another breath of air, went back down again, and stuck part of I guess up to my torso back in again. And, you talk about black, and I mean, I could see absolutely nothing, could feel nothing. Came back up again, and at this point in time, there was probably only about that much of the plane left above water. It was going straight down, nose down. I remember banging on the fuselage, trying to give Debbie some indication, noise-wise, where to come from. Heard nothing in return, and within seconds, the plane was gone. I remember moments after that a boat came by with some people throwing out life preservers. I grabbed one of those, but they encouraged me to get in the boat to come to shore, and I didn't want to come to shore because I felt that if I stayed there and marked the place that it would help the divers find the plane quicker. I could sense that there was a helicopter coming in. I don't know what kind of helicopter it was, Coast Guard, but divers jumped out, 2 divers jumped out, and they were able to help me get into the boat. I mean, I found myself just unable to move or swim or move my arms. I got in the boat. They eventually took us over to the shoreline, put us in an ambulance, and we waited. And although I didn't want to go, much to my chagrin, they forced us to take the ambulance to the hospital to get checked out. And it was there at the hospital that I learned that my wife had perished in the plane crash. She had drowned. I learned a lot through this event. The next few days were a blur to me. I know that I was surrounded by friends and family members and loved ones, and they carried me. I can remember coming into the house with my 5-year-old son, kind of looking around Dad to see where Mom was, and I had to explain to him that his mom wasn't coming home. That was hard. I went and laid down to take a nap that night, and he came with me, 5 years old, and he brought with him one of Debbie's pajama tops because it smelled like her, and he wanted to just comfort his dad. Debbie's funeral was incredible. She was a psychiatrist by profession, and I had no idea how many people that she had helped. She always told me, she said, one of the rules is that when we're out and somebody comes up to me and chats and they don't introduce themselves or that I don't introduce you to them, that means that they're a patient, and I'm trying to maintain the confidentiality. So I learned to just step back and wait, and when they were done talking, we'd carry on. So many of her patients came to the funeral. It was really moving to me because they wanted to pay their respects, but they were able to let go of the concern that they might have that their privacy might be opened up, and they helped share with me how important she was in their lives and how she had helped them. It was just amazing to me what a positive impact that she had had on so many people, friends and family. I struggled for a long time with why did my God decide to take her and not me, because clearly she was a better person than I was. She was more valuable in this world. Our kids needed her more than they needed me. And I still don't know the answer to that. But I do know that I have learned a lot from that experience. I've learned how important life is. I think I've learned what's really important in life. And I have learned that you just can't take life for granted. You can't take a day for granted. You can't take the people that you love for granted. You can't take your friends for granted. You can't take the talents that God has given us for granted. You have to use what skills and talents that we have every day to help people that aren't as fortunate as we are and that need our help. And we, thank goodness, don't know when our day will come, because that gives us an opportunity to live every day to its fullest and help do justice. So that's my story. Thank you all.